Hi all, Dr. Reynolds here. I just wanted to use this week's lecture to walk you through how to complete a phonology problem. So you should start by first printing out the handout so you can follow along because it'll give you your data set, your collection of words and transcriptions to work from. So basically, we're going to start by looking at the sounds of the voiced and the voiceless R. So are these sounds allophones of separate phonemes or allophones of the same phoneme? That's our big question with this data set. Okay? Of course, as native speakers, we know intuitively that they're allophones of the same phoneme. Since this is our language, we know that the voiced R is dominant and the voiceless R is an allophone of that R. Okay? However, the procedure for doing an analysis should produce the same answer without appealing to our intuitions. But it's easier to start with English nums because we can recognize what is actually correct and kind of our brains can get around it. In order to answer, we need to examine the distribution of sound within these data. So we need to first determine the set of phonetic environments in which they occur. For this example, we can define the phonetic environment as the sounds that immediately precede and follow it within a word. So there are different kinds of phonetic environments. The primary one we'll be dealing with are the actual sounds that come around the sound under observation, okay? So in this example, the word gray, for example, which is transcribed as GRE, right? R is in the environment G underscore E. That is, it becomes after the G sound and before the E sound. So the best way to begin a phonemic analysis is to determine whether sounds in question are an overlapping distribution, that is, they occur in the same environments. First, we look for minimal pairs. Suppose, for instance, that we are interested in the sounds, the aspirated P, 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 and the aspirated T, 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 in the data above. Okay, these sounds appear in the minimal pair par and tar. Notice they're exactly the same, except we have that different initial sound. In par, the initial sound is the aspirated p, and in tar, the initial sound is the aspirated t, right? These sounds appear in a minimal pair then, right? They're in exactly the same phonetic environment. But they have different meanings, and they differ phonetically by only one sound. This tells us they are not only overlapping, that says they don't actually both occur only in the same place, but they're also in contrastive distribution because the difference between them causes a difference in meaning. Therefore, they're allophones of different phonemes, okay? So we can't write a rule for that. We can't explain why that P or that T needs to be there based on phonetic environment, okay? What we're interested in, however, are writing the rules for those ones that we can predict, and that's what we'll get to in just a minute, okay? But look first at the words crab and crab. These are two different pronunciations of the same word, crab. And they do not form a minimal pair because they mean the same thing, right? However, they do differ in their final consonant. That is, they have one sound difference. They're exactly equal except for the final B sound. So this pair of words shows that the B and then the slightly open B are in overlapping distribution, but they're in free variation. That is, they're kind of like minimal pairs, except that they are allophones of the same phoneme, but we can't predict them because they're in free variation. They're based basically on individual pronunciation. Since the R, the voiced R, and the voiceless R are not in overlapping distribution in our data, right? We look at the words, they don't occur in the exact same places as each other, in the same phonetic environments as each other. We know it's not overlapping, so we can assume they're in complementary distribution, which means we should be able to make rules or generalizations about the prediction of which one will appear where, okay? So we must prove this, of course, by making a generalization about where the voiced R but not the voiceless R may appear, and vice versa. In order to do so, we need to compare the phonetic environments of each of these sounds. The easiest way is to make a list of each sound and its environments. Recall that the number sign indicates a word boundary. Sometimes called a pound sign also, right? So you'll see on the handout that under the voiced R, we have the phonetic environments between the G and the E, between the A, or after the A and at the end of a word, after the B and before the O, and then at the beginning of the word before an I. Okay? And the voiceless R appears after the aspirated P, the aspirated K, the F, and the sh sound. Okay? And then it becomes before different vowel sounds. So once we've organized this list of phonetic environments, we can make two types of generalizations, one for each R and voiceless R. So how do we do that? We look first to find natural classes. So we see, if we look carefully, that voiceless R is preceded by the aspirated P, aspirated K, the F sound, and the sh sound, all of which are voiceless consonants. So it's possible for us to simplify our description of the environment as follows. The voiceless R appears after voiceless consonants. Looking at R shows that B and G are voiced consonants and A is voiced, but that also includes at the end of words and at the beginning of words. So we can observe there's no single natural class in which R can be found. Similarly, looking at the sounds that follow our R's and our voiced R's and voiceless R's illustrates that only the voiced R can appear at the end of the word, but both can occur before a vowel. Thus, our conditioning environment of the voiced R and voiceless R appears to be the preceding sound. That is, the thing that seems to indicate the difference between whether it will be voiced or voiceless is the sound that comes right before our sound, or the sound of R. Okay. So number two, we look for complementary gaps in the environment. We've noted that voiceless R appears after voiceless consonants, and R appears in a variety of environments. We can also note that voiced R does not appear in the same environments as voiceless R, and moreover, voiceless R does not appear where voiced R does. If they were, we would have a minimal pair. In this case, we don't. So they seem to have a systematic and complementary gaps. That is, they're in complementary distribution. They're in predictable variations. Okay. So now we can state a generalization about the distribution of these sounds. That is, we can write a rule that will make predictions about where each of the sounds can occur. So the voiceless R, as we stated before, appears following voiceless consonants, and the voiced R appears everywhere else. So finally, we can determine the identity of the phoneme and its allophones. As it's clear that the voiceless R only occurs in one environment, we can identify the voiced R as the base phoneme, or in slashes to indicate that it's a phoneme rather than phonetic transcription, we have in slashes R. This allows us to consolidate our rule even smaller, right? So our phoneme R changes to the sound voiceless R in what environment? After voiceless consonants, okay? And when there, it's written in text to make it easier to understand. Once you get to the end of the chapter, you'll see a section on features, in which case you'll learn how to put voiceless consonants in a more detailed description by indicating the ways in which it fits into the features chart. I've included in the course 2 links to features charts to help you get started. This is the more complex one that kind of has everything, and the other one is an easier one to get you started. There's also charts in the book to help. So what you'll do this week is you'll work in groups on some problems, and then you'll do some of the easier homework on your own. Hopefully, but you'll get that all done this week. If you have any questions, ask them. Email me, put them on Moodle. Ask your group members, obviously. And then next Monday, I will open up the quiz and give you the homework answers so we can double check our answers, make sure we understand everything and where we're headed, ask any questions, and you'll be able to take that quiz next week. So good luck. Go ahead and try some of these problems before you give up. This is the hardest chapter we've worked on so far, so prepare yourself for that. But really, I would recommend looking at the homework problems, the problems at the end of the book, the end of the chapter. See which sections they refer to. Read everything up to that section and attempt to do that problem. And as always, I recommend you do the problems on your own, even though you're working in a group, and just use your group as a way to check each other, okay? Then go back, see where the section cutoff is for the next problem, and read through that section. And that way, because all the knowledge builds through the chapter. In this chapter, you also look at breaking down syllables. I think that's fairly easy, and in my slides for the PowerPoint, it's broken down a little bit. But if you need more help, send me an email, and I can make a similar video, okay? Good luck, you guys, and as always, I'm here to help.